So I will try to be quick. We'll try to skip a few issues that are related to what Holger just mentioned. And I try to give you a perspective from a venture capital view as far as this is possible in 15 minutes. And so the bad news is I still don't give you coffee. It's just the 140 liters that he mentioned. And it's even worse, it's just still the virtual water. So before I start giving a few comments about the water space from a venture capital perspective, let me quickly introduce the company I'm working for so you can filter everything that I can say with my background. I work for Emerald Technology Ventures. We are a Cleantech venture capital firm that focuses on the areas of energy, materials, and water. We have been managing 300 million euros since our inception. We have offices in Zurich and Toronto. We have a global investor base. 1/3 of the money in our current fund comes from large corporations like Dow, Bosch, Unilever, and so on. You see them down there. We have a global deal flow, about 1,000 deals a year. And just a figure on investments, we have realized 46 investments since our inception, done some IPOs and trade sales. So within that organization, I'm the one that is responsible for the water sector, and almost all the time that I spend is dedicated to that sector. So a few data points. This is the deal flow that we have seen. We have evaluated more than 700 deals in the water space so far. And down there you see the 3 currently active portfolio companies in the water space, so you get an idea of what we are actually investing in as a water investor. One company is the pressure pipe inspection company, a rather later stage company when we invested. That was in 2008. They are dedicated to condition assessment and leak detection in urban infrastructure. Inge Water Technologies is a German company. They're producing a very robust, both chemically and physically very robust ultrafiltration membrane. Ultrafiltration, for those who don't know, they're basically replacing sand filters, a very reliable barrier for viruses and bacteria, and obviously for any other process step following the filtration step. AquaSpy is about smart irrigation monitoring. Here we talk about soil moisture probes, communication devising to transmit the data, and the software to do the analysis. If we move away now from Emerald a little bit, those are general data points on a global scale. About 3 to 5% of Cleantech investments are related to water, and you see that there is a dip in terms of money invested into the sector, but the number of investments is certainly going up, and I project this to continue this way. Now, just what holds for any venture capital investment also holds for the water investments. At least that's my point of view, and that's why you have to be very careful in analyzing those opportunities and realizing that you're part of the venture capital industry with all the rules and ties behind it. Otherwise, you have to look for different investment vehicles. So we are also looking for, just like any other venture capitalist, we look for big and growing markets, quick adoption cycles, active exit landscapes, top management, scalable and sustainable business model. Well, at least quick adoption cycles and active exit landscape. If you hear that, I guess most of you don't really believe that to find in the water sector. But it's actually picking up, and let me try to dive into that. But first of all, let's start with the market in itself and with the dilemma that you can basically see in the water space. And Holger has basically alluded to that already. The issue is really this opposite picture between consumption and revenues generated. You see how much water is consumed in agriculture and how much of the world market related to water is related to irrigation. It's almost none. And you see that basically most of the money is spent with regard or in the operation of utilities. Okay, on this dilemma, we have certain strong market drivers acting. Again, I don't want to repeat too much what Holger said. On the one hand, we have demographic changes. This refers to global population growth as well as urbanization, but don't forget also depopulation, especially here around Berlin. Some Eastern German countries, depopulation is really the difficult issue that needs to be solved, because an infrastructure has been designed for a certain amount of people, for a certain use of water. If people move out, you all of a sudden have higher costs to cover with less people. And then when we talk about demographic changes, we also have to talk about industrialization in countries like China. We talk about emissions that are generated from those industries. And we talk about an increasing gross domestic product that leads to a different diet that people follow. And we learned what that means if people start eating meat. Okay, so that's one aspect. The other is climate stress that comes on top of it. You have flood protection to install. You have droughts that cause for measures in order to make sure that you still have water available during droughts. That means you, on the one hand, you have to look for new sources of water. That can be desalination, it can be water recycling, and you have to be more water efficient. In agriculture, it could be something like geohumus is offering, or in other areas, more efficient process technologies. And if you look at that map, we're not talking about developing countries only. You see here the US is largely affected by that, and so on. Aging or non-existing infrastructure is a very big topic. Everybody likes to talk about water because that's the emotional aspect, and that's what we like to think of when we start dramatizing the topic. But it boils down to basic infrastructure needs and basic assets in the ground that have not been taken care of properly in most of the cases. So just a number from Switzerland, there are 64 billion of Swiss francs in the grounds that need to be maintained. And we all know that due to the crisis we're currently facing, the money available to actually cope with that is not really there. So you need to bring intelligence into the picture to cope with that setting. And then we also face so-called emerging contaminants. I don't know whether you heard of them, trace organics, trace heavy metals. All of them can be treated. All of them can still be found in our environment. And a lot of people have concerns that they could cause chronic diseases like endocrine disruption or cancer. Those are the high-level market drivers that act on our sector. But I think what is really important, especially for venture capitalists, is that those drivers actually have led already to significant action. On the customer side, you see municipalities both on the fact that there is not as much water available, as well as there are not many financial resources available. You see them acting differently. You see them moving into strategic asset management, and you see them seeking for flexible solutions in the light of urbanization and depopulation. You have corporates like Unilever, Coca-Cola, Walmart, and the like, that actually take the concept of visual water into their guidelines to run through their internal processes, but also to screen their supply chain in terms of vulnerabilities and drive those supply chains towards more sustainable, more water efficient solutions. And that has an effect again on the farmer level, and that's what we can see, and that's about time to happen, because farmers don't like to move actually. But if the big guys tell them to, that implies something for the technology need on that level as well. Then we have the market players, the technology, engineering, operations, and service providers. You can see the key players like the Siemens, GEs, Veolias, and Suez. You can see them acting differently today. The adoption cycle is shortened, and the not invented here syndrome is becoming weaker. They are much more active, and next to them, we have new market entrants like IBM There are others of similar size that are thinking of doing the same. Not all of them announce it. IBM did it. So what this actually means from a venture capital perspective is that the light gray area indicates why we have an accelerated market adoption, important for a venture capitalist, and the dark gray area indicates an active exit landscape. What I added here on the dark gray area are the water funds. Don't know whether you all heard of quite a number of public equity water funds that we now have on the markets. One is Pictet from Switzerland, the other is SAM, also from Switzerland. They are the biggest one. Pictet, I think, has 4 billion euros under management. SAM has 2 billion, and there are a number of others, and they are desperate for pure play water companies. So obviously, that's a very fertile ground to actually exit a water company into that environment in a public offering. On the management side, it's the same as in any venture capital investment. We look for the right capabilities at every stage. The water is no different to other areas. On the business model side, with regard to water, I still prefer that the core is a unique and protectable technology. And then the business model is really a question of what kind of technology is it? What remaining technical risks do I have? Is anybody actually willing to invest in that asset, or will I have to prove it through a build, own, operate, transfer model first? Is the target industry accepting a business model that I have in mind? And obviously, from a venture capital perspective, how capital intense is that model? To sum up, I present you with a filtrate of a number of options where you could invest in the water space. This is what I think are the most interesting areas to invest. Behind that is an analysis where we could talk for an hour or two. So reuse, desalination, decentralized drinking water and wastewater treatment are certainly the areas of interest in the mid to long term. And if you understand the water market better on a technological level, it would be membranes, UV, ultrafiltration, ultraviolet purification. Is that referring to advanced oxidation procedures, sensors, software? I guess this goes too much into depth, but I just still wanted to give a quick insight into what we have in mind and what we're looking for. Thanks.
Thank you very much.